Today, when basketball fans talk about the greatest scorers in NBA history, names like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James usually dominate the conversation. But one name that often gets overlooked is Carmelo Anthony. That's surprising because for nearly 2 decades, there were very few players in the NBA more dangerous with a basketball in their hands. In his prime, Melo could score from absolutely anywhere on the court. He had the size of a power forward, the footwork of Kobe Bryant, the strength to bully defenders in the post, and one of the smoothest jump shots the league had ever seen. Double-team him, and he'd shoot right over you. Guard him one-on-one, and he'd back you down until you had no chance. There wasn't a defensive scheme that truly worked. For years, stopping Carmelo Anthony wasn't about finding the right defender. It was about hoping he missed. But before he became one of the greatest scorers the NBA had ever seen, Carmelo Anthony's journey was anything but easy. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Melo's childhood was filled with challenges. When he was only 2 years old, his father passed away from cancer, leaving his mother to raise the family by herself. Looking for a better life, they eventually moved to Baltimore, Maryland. Unfortunately, the neighborhood they moved into was one of the toughest in the city. Violence, drugs, and crime surrounded him every single day. For many kids growing up there, making it to adulthood was already difficult. Making it to the NBA seemed almost impossible. Basketball became Carmelo's escape. Every hour he wasn't in school, he was on the basketball court. It didn't matter if it was freezing outside or the courts were crowded. Melo wanted one thing: to become great. He spent countless hours perfecting his jump shot, learning footwork, and studying players who came before him. Even at a young age, he wasn't relying on athleticism. He wanted skill. He wanted to become impossible to guard. At first, colleges weren't lining up to recruit him. During his early high school years, Carmelo wasn't considered the superstar he would later become. But as he continued to grow both physically and as a basketball player, everything changed. He transferred to Oak Hill Academy, one of the greatest basketball schools in America. Suddenly, he wasn't just playing against local competition anymore. Every night he faced elite players who would eventually make the NBA. Instead of struggling, Melo dominated. His scoring ability separated him from almost everyone else. Defenders simply couldn't figure him out. He could score in isolation, post up smaller defenders, knock down mid-range jumpers, attack the basket, and hit three-pointers when defenses backed away. Every game seemed to add another highlight to his growing reputation, and by the time he graduated, Carmelo Anthony had become one of the top recruits in the country. Unlike many future NBA stars, Melo only spent 1 season in college. He committed to Syracuse University, and from the moment he arrived, it was obvious he was the best player on the floor. Freshmen weren't expected to carry championship contenders, but Carmelo didn't care about expectations. He averaged over 22 points and 10 rebounds per game while leading Syracuse through one of the greatest seasons in school history. Then came March Madness. This was where Carmelo Anthony announced himself to the entire basketball world. Game after game, he completely took over. Whether it was knocking down clutch jumpers, attacking the basket, or dominating the glass, Melo looked like a future NBA superstar. Syracuse continued upsetting top teams until they reached the national championship game against Kansas. The pressure couldn't have been bigger. Millions of people were watching. The championship was on the line. And Carmelo Anthony played like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. He finished with 20 points and 10 rebounds, leading Syracuse to its first NCAA national championship in school history. As a freshman. Think about that. 1 year. 1 championship. 1 unforgettable college season. There was nothing left for him to prove. Shortly after cutting down the nets, Carmelo declared for the 2003 NBA draft. Unfortunately for him, it happened to be the greatest draft class basketball had ever seen. LeBron James went first overall. Darko Milicic somehow went second. Then, with the third overall pick, the Denver Nuggets selected Carmelo Anthony. Looking back now, it's incredible to think about just how loaded that draft really was. Besides LeBron and Melo, it also included future Hall of Famers like Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and several future All-Stars. Yet despite being surrounded by so much talent, Carmelo wasted absolutely no time proving he belonged among the very best. The Denver Nuggets had finished the previous season with only 17 wins, making them one of the worst teams in basketball. Expectations weren't exactly high. Fans hoped Melo would improve the franchise over time, but nobody expected him to change everything immediately. That's exactly what he did. From his very first season, Carmelo looked like a veteran. He averaged over 21 points per game as a rookie, showing off the complete scoring package that would eventually make him one of the most feared offensive players in basketball. More importantly, he completely transformed Denver overnight. The Nuggets improved from 17 wins to 43 wins in just one season and made the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade. Very few rookies in NBA history have ever had that kind of impact. But for Carmelo Anthony, this was only the beginning. Because the version of Melo that entered the NBA was scary. The version that was about to reach his prime was almost impossible to stop. By the time Carmelo Anthony entered his third NBA season, the league already knew exactly what kind of player he was becoming. He wasn't trying to be the next Magic Johnson, constantly looking to set up teammates. He wasn't chasing triple-doubles or trying to fill every category on the stat sheet. Carmelo Anthony had one job, and he did it better than almost anyone else in the league. He got buckets. And once he found his rhythm, there was almost nothing a defense could do to stop him. Every superstar has a signature move. Michael Jordan had his fadeaway. Dirk Nowitzki had his one-legged jumper. Kobe Bryant could score from impossible angles. Carmelo Anthony had one of the deepest offensive bags basketball had ever seen. He could back defenders down with his strength, hit turnaround fadeaways over either shoulder, knock down mid-range jumpers without needing much space, attack the basket through contact, or simply pull up from three. There wasn't a single area on the floor where defenders felt comfortable leaving him alone. What made Melo so terrifying wasn't his athleticism. It was how effortless scoring looked. He never seemed rushed. He never looked out of control. Every jab step, every pump fake, every spin move had a purpose. Defenders often knew exactly what he wanted to do, yet they still couldn't stop it. That's what separated great scorers from legendary scorers. Everyone in the arena knew the ball was going to Carmelo Anthony, and somehow, he still found a way to score. As Denver continued improving every season, Melo developed into one of the league's biggest stars. The Nuggets became a playoff team year after year, and Pepsi Center quickly turned into one of the toughest places for opponents to play. Every time Carmelo caught fire, the crowd fed off his energy. One basket turned into 3. 3 baskets turned into 10. Before defenses even realized what was happening, Melo had already scored 30 points. One of the biggest reasons for Denver's success was the arrival of Chauncey Billups in 2008. Billups, a Denver native and NBA champion with the Detroit Pistons, gave the Nuggets something they had been missing for years: leadership. He controlled the offense, made smart decisions, and allowed Carmelo to focus on doing what he did best: scoring. The chemistry between the two was immediate. Chauncey organized the team, while Melo finished games. The 2008-09 season became the greatest year of Carmelo's career in Denver. Everything finally came together. Denver finished with 54 wins, the second-best record in the Western Conference, and entered the playoffs looking like legitimate championship contenders. But the Western Conference at that time was absolutely loaded. Every round felt like the NBA Finals. You had Kobe Bryant's Lakers, Tim Duncan's Spurs, Dirk Nowitzki's Mavericks, Brandon Roy's Trailblazers, and Yao Ming's Rockets. There were no easy matchups. Carmelo didn't care. Against New Orleans in the first round, he dominated. Then came Dallas, where Melo completely outplayed one of the league's toughest teams. Every series seemed to make him even more confident. He wasn't just scoring, he was controlling games with his physicality, his footwork, and his ability to make impossible shots when Denver needed them most. For the first time in franchise history since the ABA days, the Denver Nuggets reached the Western Conference Finals. Standing in their way: Kobe Bryant. The Los Angeles Lakers. Two of the greatest scorers of their generation were finally meeting with a trip to the NBA Finals on the line. Every game felt like a heavyweight boxing match. Kobe would score. Then Melo answered. Kobe would hit a fadeaway. Melo would respond with a three. Neither player was willing to back down. Throughout the series, Carmelo averaged nearly 28 points per game while battling one of the greatest defenders and competitors basketball had ever seen. He played some of the best basketball of his career, but Kobe was simply too much. The Lakers won the series in 6 games before eventually defeating the Orlando Magic to win the NBA championship. Although Denver fell short, that playoff run changed how people viewed Carmelo Anthony. He wasn't just an elite scorer anymore. He had proven he could lead a team deep into the playoffs. Unfortunately, the Nuggets were never able to reach those heights again. Despite making the playoffs year after year, Denver struggled to build another championship-caliber roster around their superstar. Meanwhile, rumors began growing louder that Carmelo wanted a bigger stage. A place where basketball never sleeps. A city that lives and breathes the game. New York. But before we get there, it's impossible to talk about Carmelo Anthony without mentioning what many people believe was the greatest version of him. Olympic Melo. Every time Carmelo put on a Team USA jersey, he became a completely different player. Surrounded by other superstars, he somehow looked even more unstoppable. His confidence skyrocketed, his shooting became automatic, and his scoring exploded. While many NBA stars sacrificed their offensive games during international play, Melo embraced the role. He became Team USA's ultimate scorer. Whether it was the 2008 Redeem Team, the dominant 2012 Olympic squad, or later tournaments, Carmelo consistently delivered when his country needed him. He eventually became one of the most decorated players in USA basketball history, winning 3 Olympic gold medals and becoming Team USA's all-time leading scorer and rebounder at the time of his retirement from international competition. Then came one of the greatest scoring performances basketball has ever seen. On January 24, 2014, against the Charlotte Bobcats, Carmelo Anthony scored an incredible 62 points, setting the Madison Square Garden single-game scoring record. But perhaps an even crazier performance came years earlier. In 2013, Melo dropped 50 points against the Miami Heat. Sounds impressive, right? Here's the unbelievable part. He scored all 50 points on jump shots. Not a single point came from a layup. Not a single dunk. Not a single free throw. Every single basket was a jumper. Think about how impossible that is in today's NBA. Defenders knew exactly what he wanted to do. Miami knew he was shooting. And they still couldn't stop him. That's how dangerous Carmelo Anthony was in his prime. His footwork deserves far more credit than it receives. Young players today study Kobe Bryant's footwork and Kevin Durant's scoring package, but many of those same moves were perfected by Carmelo. His jab step became one of the deadliest weapons in basketball. One quick fake was enough to freeze defenders just long enough for him to pull up. If they bit on the fake, he'd drive straight to the basket. If they stayed back, he'd knock down the jumper. It was almost like a chess match, and Melo was always thinking 2 moves ahead. For years, players around the league admitted that Carmelo was one of the toughest covers in basketball. You couldn't guard him with smaller defenders because he'd overpower them in the post. Bigger defenders struggled because they couldn't stay in front of him. Double-teaming him wasn't much better because he had become comfortable finding open teammates when the defense collapsed. Night after night, Melo made scoring look simple. And before anyone realized it, he had quietly become one of the greatest pure scorers the NBA had ever seen. But eventually, the rumors became reality. After years of carrying the Denver Nuggets, Carmelo Anthony wanted a new challenge. He wanted to return home. To the city where basketball meant everything. To Madison Square Garden. To the New York Knicks. And although his arrival brought some of the greatest individual performances of his career, it would also become the most debated chapter of his legacy. When the news finally broke that Carmelo Anthony was heading to New York, it felt like one of the biggest moments in NBA history. Melo wasn't just another superstar changing teams. He was coming home. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Carmelo had always dreamed of playing under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden. The Knicks hadn't had a true superstar in years, and the city was desperate for someone who could bring championship basketball back to New York. Fans packed the streets, jerseys sold out almost instantly, and for the first time in a long time, there was real hope that the Knicks could once again become one of the NBA's elite franchises. But there was one problem. The Knicks had to give up a huge portion of their roster to acquire him. Players like Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Raymond Felton, Timofey Mozgov, and multiple draft picks were sent to Denver in the blockbuster trade. While New York finally had its superstar, many fans questioned whether the team had sacrificed too much depth. Instead of joining a championship-ready roster, Carmelo now had the responsibility of carrying a team that still had plenty of holes. None of that mattered to Melo. From the moment he stepped onto the floor at Madison Square Garden, he embraced the pressure. Every possession seemed designed to get him the basketball, and every time he touched it, the crowd erupted. There was something special about watching Carmelo play in New York. He wasn't just scoring points. He was putting on a show. His smooth jab step, turnaround fadeaways, pull-up jumpers, and impossible shots became nightly highlights on SportsCenter. Some nights it felt like defenders were playing perfect defense, only to watch Carmelo rise over them anyway. By this point in his career, Melo had become one of the most polished offensive players the league had ever seen. He no longer relied on speed or athleticism to beat defenders. Instead, he relied on skill. Every movement was calculated. He knew exactly how to create space with his shoulders, how to use his body to keep defenders off balance, and how to get to his favorite spots on the floor. If defenders played him too closely, he'd drive to the basket. If they gave him even an inch of space, he'd make them pay with one of the smoothest jump shots in basketball. Then came the 2012-13 season. Without question, it was the greatest individual season of Carmelo Anthony's NBA career. Everything clicked. Melo averaged nearly 29 points per game, leading the entire NBA in scoring and capturing the first, and only, scoring title of his career. Think about how impressive that is. During an era featuring LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kobe Bryant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and so many other elite scorers, it was Carmelo Anthony who finished at the top. Night after night, he reminded everyone that when it came to simply putting the basketball in the hoop, very few players in history could match him. The Knicks also enjoyed their best season in over a decade. Led by Carmelo, veteran point guard Jason Kidd, sixth man of the year J.R. Smith, Tyson Chandler, and Raymond Felton, New York finished with 54 wins, their best record since the 1990s. Madison Square Garden became electric once again. Every home game felt like a playoff atmosphere, and fans genuinely believed this team had a chance to compete for an NBA championship. One of the most unforgettable moments of that season came against the Miami Heat. At the time, Miami was the defending NBA champion, led by LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. They were in the middle of one of the greatest seasons in franchise history and were considered nearly unbeatable. Carmelo didn't care who was standing in front of him. He exploded for 50 points, but what made the performance legendary wasn't just the number. It was how he scored them. Every single point came on jump shots. No layups. No dunks. No free throws. just pure shot-making. It remains one of the greatest displays of scoring skill the NBA has ever seen. Watching the highlights today almost feels unreal. Defenders were glued to him. Hands were in his face. Double teams came from every direction. It didn't matter. Melo kept knocking down one jumper after another, making some of the toughest shots you'll ever see. Then, less than a year later, he somehow topped himself. On January 24, 2014, against the Charlotte Bobcats, Carmelo Anthony delivered the greatest scoring night in Madison Square Garden history. 62 points. Every part of his offensive game was on display. Fadeaways. Three-pointers. Mid-range pull-ups. Post moves. Fast break finishes. The crowd could hardly believe what they were watching. Every basket brought louder cheers than the last, and by the fourth quarter, the entire arena knew history was unfolding. When the game ended, Carmelo had broken the Madison Square Garden single-game scoring record, surpassing legends who had played in the world's most famous arena. Even today, that record still stands as one of the greatest individual performances ever seen at Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, basketball is a team game. While Melo continued putting up incredible numbers, the Knicks struggled to build a consistent championship contender around him. Injuries, coaching changes, front office decisions, and roster instability prevented New York from taking the next step. They reached the second round of the playoffs during the 2012-13 season but couldn't get past the Indiana Pacers. Looking back, many fans consider that Team Carmelo's best opportunity to reach the NBA Finals. As the years passed, the Knicks slowly began rebuilding. Eventually, both sides agreed it was time to move on. Melo was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he joined Russell Westbrook and Paul George in another attempt to compete for a championship. On paper, the trio looked dangerous. In reality, the chemistry never fully developed. Carmelo was asked to play a role he had never played before. Instead of being the first option, he had to adjust to becoming a complementary scorer, and the transition wasn't easy. After just one season, he was traded again. This time to the Atlanta Hawks, who immediately bought out his contract, allowing him to sign with the Houston Rockets. But things only got worse. Houston's offense revolved around James Harden and Chris Paul, and after only 10 games, the Rockets decided to move in a different direction. For the first time in his basketball career, it felt like the NBA had given up on Carmelo Anthony. Months passed. No phone calls. No contract offers. Many fans believed one of the greatest scorers in NBA history had played his final game. People questioned whether Melo was finished. They said the modern NBA had passed him by. They believed his career was over. Then Damian Lillard made a phone call. The Portland Trail Blazers gave Carmelo one more opportunity, and he made the most of it. Melo embraced his new role as a veteran leader and reliable scorer off the bench. He wasn't averaging 28 points anymore, but he showed he could still contribute to a winning team. His comeback became one of the best stories in the league, proving that he still belonged. Later, he joined the Los Angeles Lakers to chase the one accomplishment that had always escaped him, an NBA championship. Although the Lakers fell short, fans appreciated seeing Carmelo finish his career alongside close friend LeBron James, two players whose careers have been connected since they entered the NBA together in the legendary 2003 draft class. When Carmelo Anthony officially retired, his resume spoke for itself. A 10-time NBA All-Star. A 6-time All-NBA selection. An NBA scoring champion. A member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. A NCAA national champion. A 3-time Olympic gold medalist, widely considered one of the greatest Team USA players ever. And one of only a handful of players in NBA history to score over 28,000 career points. Yet somehow, when people talk about the greatest scorers ever, Carmelo Anthony's name doesn't always come up first. Maybe it's because he never won an NBA championship. Maybe it's because he played during the same era as LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Kevin Durant, and so many other all-time greats. But if you actually watched prime Carmelo Anthony, you know the truth. You know how impossible he was to guard. You know how defenders dreaded seeing him catch the ball on the wing. You know that once he found his rhythm, there was nothing you could do except hope he finally missed. Because prime Carmelo Anthony wasn't just a great scorer. He was one of the most complete one-on-one offensive players the NBA has ever seen. His footwork was elite. His strength was unmatched for a forward. His mid-range game was automatic. His jab step became legendary. And his ability to score from anywhere on the floor made him one of the scariest offensive players of his generation. Years from now, fans will remember the championships won by other superstars. But the players who had to guard Carmelo Anthony, they'll remember something else. They'll remember that for nearly 2 decades, when Carmelo Anthony got the ball in his hands, there wasn't a defender in the world who could truly stop him.